Thank you. Good afternoon. I am José Luis Orcin. I am part of REM as well. So welcome to this panel. We have already had an introduction of the topics of this panel. What weeds are we seeing, and also the pre-emerging problems? The presentation will go from the south to the north. First, we will have Ramon, then Mauri, then Julio. First, let me introduce Ramon. Ramon Gigón, to pronounce correctly. He is an agronomist, has a master's degree in agronomic sciences. He is an expert. He is a consultant for many companies and a trainer. We will have a presentation from the three of them. Then Pablo and Luciano will also present, and then we have the Q&A. Hello. Let me stand. Thank you, UPL, for inviting me. Thank you, José Luis, for the introduction. We will talk about the problems in each region. I am in the south, in the Pampas, in the south of Buenos Aires province. The number one weed you can see on screen, Lolium sp. ryegrass. Not only in Argentina, but also globally, ryegrass has a high initial frequency of individuals within the population that have natural resistance. It has crisscrossing, and the genes are crossed, and they can create biotypes with multiple resistances. So ryegrass that was managed in fallow with glyphosate and clethodim, we have faced problems with resistance against clethodim. For many years, it was a very good solution, but after 10, 15 years of clethodim for fallow, and not just with one application, when they start sowing in June, they do 2 or 3 clethodim applications. We have some pressure and we need to handle. So we have a big problem. You need post-emerging options or applying small with glyphosate ammonium for reset, and pre-emerging options before sowing. When we applied it, the pre-emerging option did not reach the goal because we may fall short to have the residual substance closer to sowing. We tried to take care of clethodim when we cannot do it because the producer applied too much of the product. That pre-emerging option, we need to mix it with some other substance so as to avoid the resistance. The second problem we have is the cruciferas, Brassica, not only in the south, but also in the north. Our colleagues in Córdoba are also doing some tests with crucifera, not only in the south, but also throughout the country. Unlike oleum, it has an escalated pattern. Weeds are also present in the crops of summer, such as wheat and sunflower and corn. So we need to select the resistant biotypes. The gene has already been incorporated. There are hybridations as well. Glyphosate is not working. There is another big problem. We have thick and thin weed. In many plots, it appears in combination with lolium, and there are deficiencies of control, particularly for graminicides. We also have problems in terms of mixes and blends, and this is a big problem. That deficiency of the graminicide, when we mix it with the hormonal component, creates more selection component on ryegrasses because there is low efficacy, and we start having more problems with lolium, which is combined with brassica. I have been speaking very fast. I apologize. And we are scared by 2,4-D has been the herbicide historically used for cruciferas or crucifers, particularly for brassica rapa. There is resistance to 2,4-D. The other hormonal options are quite deficient for controlling brassica. We do not have good control. These are not proper tools, so do not leave 2,4-D alone as a pre-emerging option for ryegrass. In combination with other herbicides, it can be used to achieve good control and to prevent resistance to hormonal products. Then we can have a herbicide such as fluorochlorodone, which has been used for many years. This is a herbicide that was very compelling with very good control and priced a bit high. And this year, resistance has been confirmed. A producer applied fluorochlorodone for 9 years in a row. And this is not just fluoro. It continues to be very good, but we cannot rely on it alone. We need to support it. Let's see if... Have you fallen asleep? I'm checking on the audience. Coniza is also a weed present throughout the country. We find it in the south when no-till farming was implemented in the Pampas in the year 2000, 2005, 2010. We started with the Coniza problems. We are well aware of this. It can be treated early. We are worried about a rotation with maize, particularly in the south, in areas where maize was not grown. Late maize, we can see how late delivery, this weed is present. It may be covered. We start to see some tolerance in Coniza, which was used for a long time. There is strong resistance in north of the province of Buenos Aires. And today, we see that sulfonylurea, which was working well, control has been dropping, particularly for the emerging option. It's not the same situation as we had 10 years ago. There was also selection pressure, and we have started to see cattle raising. We have seen an increase of cattle, and those green areas that are later used for pastures or grazing, they don't have herbicide controls, and sometimes we get plants that have been trampled over, that have been half-eaten, and, well, that's another problem we are seeing in terms of Coniza. Amaranthus 95% of the population are hybrid, this type of amaranthus. There is not a great culture of pre-emerging options, particularly for soy. Producers have not embraced this option for soy. They have embraced it for wheat and corn. There is an important opportunity. This has to be combined with the use of another pre-emergent so that we will not have problems of resistance. I believe that the use of pre-emergent with soy enlist and having lots combined with crucifers, and we can have a double strike with glufosinate. We see many lots with crucifers with red weeds. There are herbicides that work better for crucifers, others for red weeds, and we see complexity. When we have a combination of crucifers with red weeds, there was a herbicide that we used for amaranthus. It is not so good for crucifers, so we insist, use mixes. Do not use the emergent alone. And sunflower, even though it is important, it is not as important as wheat, soy, or corn, and herbicides are not well developed, so pre-emergents are necessary. The technology has helped. We have to go back to the pre-emergent. Pyroxa, Flumi. These can all be alternatives to control amaranthus in sunflower. We have also seen echinocloa, resistant capping. This is a picture from Ayacucho, the soy harvest this year. And you can see the major blotches or patches. There is major progress in the coastal area of Buenos Aires, resistant capping. There is a lack of use of pre-emergent herbicides. When the capping has flowered, then you cannot do control. You have to work with capping when it's at the initial stage. We have also seen more cattle raising, more planting of corn and sorghum. In the area of Coronel Dorrego, they used to plant corn after other corn planting, and summer grasses start to appear. So that is a kind of integrated management that is needed. There is one group of weeds, Chenopodiaceae, in the province of Buenos Aires. Thistle. There is a weed called Morenita, which is also resistant to glyphosate, and we are working with pre-emergent herbicides. Thank you. Thank you, Ramon. You can ask questions using the QR. I will get those questions on my phone. Now it is Mauricio's turn. He graduated from the University of Rosario. He is a director of a consulting firm. He is a private consultant in Santa Fe and in the north of Buenos Aires. He was part of a team providing research services for companies. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for this invitation. Being part of this panel together with Ramon is an honor, and together with Julio. I would like to talk about the situation in the north. We are 600 kilometers up north in the south of Santa Fe, in Venado Tuerto, so the presentation will be focused on that area. I was asked to talk about the weeds, and I decided to divide them into seasons: the autumn and summer, and spring and winter. We do not have problems with tolerance in the south of Córdoba. We are doing quite well. We are having good control with Rosetta, with the new PPOs that have been released into the market. This weed does not cause problems, but when the Rosetta stage is completed, the roots are more difficult to control, and the treatments require a different load of herbicides. But as long as we do it when it has the right size, we can manage it correctly. It is not a big problem for wheat. We have good controls. We have few emergencies. We generally see this in the middle of autumn. We can do a double strike if we don't want to use graminicides. And when we have long fallow, we can apply herbicides. This weed can be very well controlled. The one that causes problems is called Parietaria. This is a weed that is very elusive. We have not been successful with the PPO herbicides. We have to turn to other herbicides which pose problems in terms of rotation or the next crop. So atrazines generally are a barrier. We have a specific problem when we want to mix metribuzin with another substance. We have physical incompatibility in the tank. We have tried other situations of co-formulations. This could be a good alternative, but the use of metribuzin is a pain in the neck for the producer. We generally rely on atrazine, and we know that 45 days before sowing soy, well, this is not recommended, but it is usually done. Now, going to the spring and summer weeds, which are the ones that concern us the most. We have a problem with comelin inside the lots. They are difficult to control. We are doing double strike within the crops with the technology. It is a weed that spreads quickly with the seed and rhizome. We do not have good controls with our herbicide portfolio.
This is a weed that's really hard for us to combat, and it is hard for us to have a control that is effective. Lecheron is a weed that's also worrying us right now. When we don't use diazines before the sowing of soy, it is the kind of weed that gets installed. It doesn't work with PPO, and after it goes over 8 centimeters, it's very hard to control it with glyphosate. We have to go to a double herbicide to kill the enlist systems. We still can control some of them with glyphosate, but that when it becomes too big, it is hard to control with glyphosate, and we have to think of other strategies. Grasses, I think here we have to stop and think. We have 3 grasses here. We have Echinocloa, Eleusine, and Digitaria. They begin to appear in that particular order. They go in the order that I've mentioned them. At soy, we've been doing great controls with DIM and FOP. In corn, we have to pick it up when it's small. And the last year, we've seen some control. We've been failing in some of the controls. I spoke to Jose Luis a couple of days before with FOP and with DIM, and even with the combination of these 2 molecules, we do not manage to control it. We don't even have resistance. This is just observational. But it is something to make you alert, because we can see that we're failing in the control of Digitaria. For microteria, our main issue here is that because our driver weed is Amaranthus, the focus for the producers is to focus all of our residuals against Amaranthus. And because we know that we can later go in with a graminicide for soy, we relegate it and we put it in the background. And right now, we need to begin to think not just in those residual herbicides that control Amaranthus, but the ones that have good suppression of these 3 grasses, especially Echinocloa, and from last year, Digitaria as well. The most important weed for us, or the driver, the one that makes us spend most money, is Amaranthus. This is the driver weed, the one that we focus on. It begins in October and it finishes even after harvest. I don't want to exaggerate, but I think it's probably January or February. Sometimes this is uncontrollable. And the window of opportunity for application depends on our crop. I brought a graph here that I felt was interesting, where you could see from the last 5 campaigns all of the molecules that we try out. There's probably over 50 of these molecules in this graph. As pre-emergent for soy, for corn, post-emergent for soy and corn, and I worked out the average, and the average for control for weed at 60 days with pre-emergent of soy is 62% of control. In corn, it's 75, and in systems, in the best case scenario, we can have 30 days on, because post-emergent is done 30 days after, in 33% control. So what this means is that the opportunity for controlling Amaranthus and soy is put on 3 emergents. And if I take all of those molecules and I choose the best 2 for each group, The average in soy goes from 72 to 83, choosing the two best molecules for each year. In corn, I go from 75 to 82, but as post-emergent in soy, even if I choose the best molecules for the 3 years in all of the tests, the average doesn't vary much when it comes to control. So the golden standard is pre-emergent to crop. This is similar. I'm just going to skip it. It's open from last year. What is the strategy that we're using? We are doing overlapping. We are overlapping the residual nature of two herbicides. We will see how and why, and to maintain and prolong the residual character, not just within the crop, but for a few days before, so that we get to the sowing clean, so that we can prolong. This system has some advantages, some disadvantages as well. I see the advantages as 2 or more ways to work so that we don't exert pressure to extend residual nature, to reduce the escapes of these weeds, and less cost long term. Because if I tell you that I have to go with 2 residual herbicides, in the short term, the cost will be higher, and this will become a disadvantage because long term the cost is higher. Then the problem is carryover. You have to think of a rotation in the long term, because I can have a carryover problem and the problem of stacking with some of the molecules when we use the same family of herbicides. And I ask this because more entry into the field, when we see that we don't have this overlapping strategy, we have to go into the field and do a rescue operation. So this is not something we're capitalizing in at the moment, but that is a point that needs to be taken into account as well. What are the conditions for success so that the overlapping works properly? First of all, to know how to select which herbicide we need to overlap. The dosage and the time of application, we need to pay attention to that, to the prognosis and in the short term to do these applications. And obviously continuous monitoring so that we don't have any kind of escape before the sowing. We need to sow with a clean field. We began doing this a while ago. This is an average of 6 different campaigns where we sought and identified from which millimeter the molecule breaks down the residual feature. So what we seek, this is just for Venado Tuerto. If I go 50 kilometers away, I'm sure it'll be different, and of course it will be different if I go to Cordoba or south. And we can see that what we care about is that the way that molecule works, so we can combine the molecules that fit the way I think my year will go. This is a research we've been carrying out for a while, and we want to have the complementariness in between the molecules so that we have the best control possible. Final comments. We need to focus on grasses, those weeds that are a threat today, such as oleum, lila, is something we need to take into account. We need to eradicate them because we know that other areas have problems with this. We see overlapping as a valid control tool for amaranthus, especially in soybean. and we can use molecules that fit our needs when it comes to soil and climate. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mauri. We're going to go to the third speaker, Julio Gallo, who is an agronomist. He's doing a master. He is the owner of a company in Villa Maria in Córdoba. And in the last 15 years, he has led over 50 assays, and he has collaborated with many companies with herbicides, fertilizers, seeds, and biologicals. And he's an expert on soy, peanut, wheat, and corn. And he has trained producers as well. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. It is wonderful to be here today and to see so many people here. Of course, weeds are very interested. I can see that wherever I've been, the hall is full. We still have problems. Thank you. I'm going to thank Pablo and Luciano who are here. But there is a big team behind us. Eduardo is here as well. I remember that 10 years ago we met at Aapresid, so it is a pleasure for me to be here today. I'm going to try to talk about problems and solutions, and my idea is to divide what are the problems and what solutions can be brought. And first, I'd like to ask a question. Please raise your hand. I hope many of them. I was very surprised to see the amount of times that he said that pre-emergents were not used. That is amazing that you're not using that. For the last 15 years, we've been talking about, is there a lot of... Let's raise our hands, those who use pre-emergent. Everybody. Some don't. Okay, so I can see that lots of us use it. My idea is to talk a bit about the weeds that we have in Argentina, in Córdoba, and I'm going to mention all of these. We have a lot of the ones that they have mentioned, but we have Pariteria, Comelina, Amaranthus, Digitarius, all of the grasses, even sorghum, which was not mentioned yet, Borreria, and some that are in the area, very, very territorial and hard to control. And there is a new one, I don't know whether you've seen it. It's called Eragrostis. I think that will bring us problems in future. We used to have Avidens before, and it did not explode, and as long as we can control it with glyphosate, we won't have a problem. After 9 years, sometimes you get resistance. So about Coniza, what are the problems that we see? There's lack of residual herbicides in long or intermediate fallows. They're not using so many residuals there. We have a loss of sensibility to ALS herbicide. We have late control of the weed, especially when it's rustified. Once it's gone over the size, we see that the control diminishes greatly, no matter what herbicide we use. But we know many times it's very hard to apply it at the right time. The other problem is that we have regrowth within the crops. We see that we have excellent burning, but when we control glypho 4D and the basic application, the controls are great, but we see that once the crop is there, especially soy ones that are pretty loose in the center of Argentina where we don't have so much rain, Coniza may regrow, and there we have some solutions. And the solutions are these: the positioning of herbicides on fallow. This is something that we can use, and we have the utilization of new technologies for resistant crops, where we can go to a double strike within the crop. And there's a question that was asked already about this. And we have this new technology, and it'll be interesting to talk about it, and it will solve problems. Paretaria is a weed that we saw last year explode. Everybody kept asking how to control it. I think there was an activation due to the environmental conditions, climate conditions. The same, when this comes out, there's no more residuals on the ground, and that's why we have these plants that come up. We also have a big problem with the classical reset that I just mentioned, glypho and 2.4-D plus paraquat. It doesn't really hurt the weeds. You have no control of any plants that come up. Another problem we see is that given the shape of the plant, it's very difficult to control the growth peaks, and it is not very sensitive to hormonal herbicides. You cannot control it with that. So it depends on the quality of application to be able to control it. There is the problem. It can cover a lot of the ground, and that makes it difficult for us to use pre-emergent herbicides. The problem is not so much when it appears in the limits, because it is a weed that stays underneath the crop, is not so competent, but it absorbs the residual that we are putting down, and that's where the problems happen. We don't kill the weed, and we don't get the amaranthus or grasses to get that residual. Solutions. It is very sensitive to atrazine, terbitilazine, metribuzin, and prometrine. This is controlled in very much covered grounds with mixes or blends of terbitilazine and metribuzin. Another possibility that we see to control it is to use pre-emergents in isolated areas. HPPD, for example, are very effective. They are mobile within this weed, and they can control it. And of course, if we're going to do an HPPD or terbitilazine for corn, that works great. PPO, flumexacin, for example, has great control over this weed. And afterwards, if the soil coverage allows it, we have to see whether we use this to kill the weed. But if we go with HPPD plus one of the atrazines, maybe for corn, or flumoxacin and soy, we could control the parietorate that appears. Amaranthus. I did not want to mention it too much because it's everywhere. It is a completely federal kind of weed. And in our area, the problem is that you can use a pre-emergent, but you have to coincide the application with the sowing, with the humidity, and lots of other conditions, and that makes it very hard. That is the problem that we have. Pre-emergents are working great. With amaranthus, we don't see a loss of sensitivity in the growth. There are some fields where this has been detected, but you don't see it in many of these fields. They're all working, except for particular fields where it was detected and the resistance has been flagged. Amaranthus and Palmerian. In Córdoba, we have both of these hybrids. We see that plants are born within the crop. As I was saying before, it's hard because there's not enough shadow and shade. The classic technology, the controls reach 30%, right? So they're very scarce. And with corn, we have higher controls. We have different technologies. Bad quality of application with stressed weeds, especially where we are, where Rain is very erratic. We can see that we cannot control stressed weeds, but how can we manage amaranthus? We know that we have many residual herbicides that control amaranthus in small sizes. This is very positive, although, as we were saying with Parietaria, it is not recommended, but phylloxacin, sustentasone, and even trimethoprim, these three, when they have small amounts, can be applied. HPPD, we see they have controls, especially when they mix a pre-emergent with corn, with the different herbicides, they have great control.
And we are going to repeat the use of new technologies that allow a double strike or a single strike within the soy or corn crop. Let me emphasize regarding the new technologies the use of pre-emergent herbicides, because many people believe that they will be able to avoid the use of pre-emergent herbicides if they use new technologies, but this is not the case. We need to continue using pre-emergent herbicides, even though we may use the new technologies. The pre-emergents need to be used because these should be rescue products. This is we have superior technologies, but we should use them as rescue, not main tool. When you do not use a high dose of the herbicide, you get chloris. There is no residual herbicide to control. Erratic controls. We see this in Paraguay. You have 45 plants, and you are able to eliminate many of them. If they are not controlled with Paraguay, chloris is justified. The weeds sometimes are combated with products that are not compatible. Hormonal herbicides are incompatible with graminicides in applications during the day where there is strong insolation. This is for chloris and for any grass. It continues to be sensitive to many residual graminicides and very sensible or sensitive to HPP. When you are going to apply a pre-emergent, these are very good results of HPP on its own as pre-emergent and post-emergent herbicide. It improves performance. You need to take into account that you need to add glyphosate. Even though the weed is resistant, it helps mobilize molecules within the plant. Another advantage is that we can use mixes of clethodim with other products when there is loss of sensitivity in some of the lots. To conclude, this is another type, Eragrostis. I started seeing it 2 years ago. This is a weed that when you discover it, you start seeing it everywhere in all lots. There is resistance to glyphosate. In the study that we did, There was a high dose of clethodim, a high dose of haloxyfop. It was not controlled, zero control. Many plants, the same as chloris. We have seen regrowth, but we also have control. It has burning power, and glufosinate has burning power both for small sizes, or we can also use the double strike. We have been talking about weeds and management, and now we have reached the point when we need to apply the weed control method. This video, here you can see, this is a mixture of glyphosate in our tank and sulfentrazone. Why do you want a triple mix? You can mix it in the tank. Well, I applied that product, 60 liters per hectare, with the mesh. It was very good, very well applied. The spray, we did a survey, 500 people voted. If we had 33% did it worked, 33% said they had doubts, and 33% said it wouldn't work. And all of them were right. It worked a little. So both things happened. It had residue. So we sometimes come to the conclusion that we need a triple mix. We're going to select incompatible mixes. Mauri also talked about that. Mixes that are complex to accomplish. There are weeds that are rustified and are very difficult to control. Loss of efficacy in residual herbicides. What you can see in white are crystals of glyphosate, of paraquat, of 4-2,4-D. This means that the residuality is decreased. On the positive side, the co-formulation can achieve compatibility and can be applied to the field without problems. And that's it. Thank you. Okay. Now, Luciano from UPL, the development manager in Latin America, and Pablo Angeletti, product manager for herbicides in UPL. We are very happy to be here. I would like to thank you for sharing the problems. Thank you, guys. The two products have come from the need to solve the problems. We were only talking about a single species, Amaranthus in the north and Cruciferous in the south. But now producers have all types, and they have complex management. When they start mixing other active ingredients, they find resistance, incompatibility, as Julio said, and some weeds that were not present before. There were many different types mentioned today, Parietii, also Cruciferous, Gomphrena. So it's very complex. And sometimes you don't get enough results with 2 active principles. You need 3 active principles. Metrinusin and Sandan Ultra is a triple mix. It includes 3 active ingredients with 3 different modes of action. 2 are well known, sulfentrazole and metalacril. Metalacril. Metribuzin was included in the formulation. Metribuzin broadens the scope for the cruciferous and the other weeds that were named today. These are increasingly present. In Paraguay, it is the main weed. It is a problem. Evidence. If it breaks resistance here with most pre-emergent herbicides, we will not have good control. That is why we launched Shutdown Ultra. It is an easy formulation. It will give us some post-emerging control of weeds in addition to the residual effect. It is for pre-emergent herbicide for soy. The silver bullet is not to be found on top of the crop. We are leaders with Lifeline. We need to take care of that tool, and the silver bullet has to be used with pre-emergent herbicides, and that is why we launched this version this year. And the second launch is Lifeline Zinc in order to solve the grass problem using graminicides. You know that worldwide, glufosinate is one of the alternatives. It is one of the herbicides that has less resistance. We need to give it less power on grasses. It provides very good control for amaranthus. The target is spectacular, but for grasses, we need to reinforce it. And the blend in post-emergency is very good. We have registration for maize pre-emergence, but we are going to extend registration for other crops. It is a co-formulation. It is very easy to mix. It is very stable, and it can be combined with other pre-emergent herbicides in order to broaden the spectrum. Luciano will talk about UPL's vision for the future as well. Just 2 minutes, because we want to leave time for questions. Our strategy at UPL is to work on differentiated products at the Latin America level. As Ramon, Julio, Mauri have said, we are working on formulations. We have a strength in India. We have a company in India that works with co-formulations and mixes. It is quite complex to do. We would like to share with you that in the medium term, well, last year we launched a product, but this is not all. The strategy is not to work with the isolated products. We want to have co-formulations. The idea for the medium term with the pyroxosulfone strategy for cereals, the mix of pyroxosulfone with diforican, this will have an effect on grasses as a pre-emergent. This mix will be used for cereals and also for sunflower. Sunflower did not have many contributions from herbicides in recent years. The idea is to have it in wheat and in sunflower. There is another mix, pyroxosulfone with pyroxosulfine. Amaranthus, it is very good for amaranthus. Metribuzin is very good for complementing. And there is a third mix in the medium term, amicarbazone in maize crops. It has very good control for broad leaves. It does not control thin leaves. And that is why we have presented to the regulatory authorities a combination that complement each other very well for controlling broadleaf and narrow leaves weeds. And we are working strongly on pre-emergent and chemical fallow, not just post-emergence. As Mauro showed showed in the charts, the sooner you act on weeds, the more benefits you will reap. This is a summary of our strategy at UPL to see what the roadmap is for herbicides. Thank you. There will be other launches that will be very strong. We have some time for questions. Does any of you have any experience on seed destruction? Julian Oliva and Luis Lafranconi did the only study in Argentina. The efficacy was 98%. Breaking seeds and lowering the germination of the seeds. All the studies around the world talk about a range of 95 to 98%. We believe it is another tool that can help us. Of course, we shouldn't get to the point where weeds have seeds, but we know it happens. When they see the spots, they sometimes focus the strategy. Let's not talk about the negative aspects. These are products that need a lot of power. You need to take this into account in the harvester. Yes, it has the big consumption of gas oil. And this is no joke. Another technique. We don't know what kind of weed it refers to, but the question is, do you believe that the triple mix is better than having a double strike? Glyphosate and 2,4-D. What we usually say is that the most important thing in management is to think about the size of the weed. When you think about double strike, you have a size that is quite large. The grasses that have grown too much, and then we think about double strike. When we have a pre-emergent herbicide that was incorporated with glyphosate, and we have controls over 98%, we don't need to separate. So that is the experience that we have. The double strike beyond certain weeds. Sometimes it is a result of erratic treatment. So the idea is to determine when to do the double strike. It is not the same for the different types like grasses or amaranthus. So the timing is important for that double strike. Yes, if there is an incompatibility of graminicides, if it's just a glufosinate with 2,4-D, we don't see any kind of incompatibility. And generally, the double strike is superior. Can we have time for one more question? We have many, many questions. Okay, we need to leave the room. Okay, we have limited time. We have reached the end of the session. We have some questions about the triple mix. So you can ask our speakers on the way out. Thank you, panelists, and thank you.